Good evening, everyone. My name is Indiana Troop of Wareham Viking News and Wareham Community Television, and I want to thank you all for joining us tonight for our Meet the Candidates night. Whether you're joining us virtually on Zoom or live on TV, it's my pleasure to welcome you for our discussion. Before we start, I'd like to invite Christian Fernandez, the Assistant Director of WCTV and our timekeeper for the evening, to talk about the rules and format for the debate tonight. Christian?
Thank you, Indy. Welcome everyone to our event. I do apologize for technical difficulties, but that what makes our job way more fun. Tonight, I will take on the role of timekeeper and rules enforcer, but I'm sure you guys will all behave yourselves, as this is a way for the public to meet you and understand everything that why you're running for the positions you are. At the beginning of each section, the panelists will be allowed 2 minutes to talk about themselves. No other candidate may speak at this time. The only people allowed in the panelist section are the people being asked questions, the timekeeper, and the host. Everyone else will remain in the attendee section until it is your time to talk. The host will then follow up with questions for that section. The first section to go tonight will be the unopposed elections. And currently we only have Jim Giberti and Sandy Slavin who are running for sewer commissioners. They will talk about themselves shortly. The second section will be school committee. The third section will be selectmen. As the host asks questions, each candidate will be given 1 minute to answer. No over talking of each other is allowed. If you need to rebut something that someone else has said, you may raise your hand and you will be allowed 1 minute to speak when the host calls on you. At the end of each section, each candidate will be given another 2 minutes to summarize about themselves, about everything, and then we'll go on to the next section. And now back to you, Indy.
Thank you. So are there any questions so far for Christian or I? Perfect. So when a question is posed, I will say the candidate's name, the question, and a reminder of how long you have to answer. Each candidate will answer the same question until all candidates in that office have answered. For example, I would say, Mr. Fernandez, what made you choose to run for this position? You have 1 minute to answer, and he would answer the question. I want to thank the WCTV staff for giving me the opportunity to moderate and host this event tonight. I can assure you all that I am qualified and experienced enough to lead this event, thanks to my extensive experience in journalism, politics, service, and public speaking. I also want to make sure that all candidates understand the importance of this event for the people of Wareham. It is imperative that this discussion remains helpful, thoughtful, civil, and relevant to our town. The voters and residents of Wareham deserve to have the ability to be better informed voters by your responses tonight, and I urge the candidates not to do anything to impede on that, or as Christian mentioned, you will be removed from the meeting. With all this being said, I think it's time that we call the 2021 April Candidates Night to order. So first up, we will start with the unopposed seats, and we will begin with Sandy Slavin. You have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you very much. I'm Sandy Slavin, and for those that don't know it, I am married to Alan Slavin for over 51 years. You can stop applauding. That takes a lot. I am running for a second term as a sewer user, sewer commissioners. That means I'm hooked up to sewer, and that's what my representation on the sewer commissioners are. Wareham is home. My father was a career Army officer, and no matter where we were assigned, we were always coming back to Wareham to visit family. I am a graduate of the Wareham High School. I'm very proud of that. I have a BS in education from Bouvet, Boston at Northeastern, where I met Alan as a blind date. I've worked for Digital Equipment Corporation, Compact, Hewlett Packard for 33 years before I retired 16 years ago. I was bored. I went from 70-hour work days to nothing. So I started thinking about getting busy. So I started joining organizations and volunteering on town committees. It won't take 2 minutes, but this is what I've been involved in. Been a member of the Garden Club for over 32 years, including being past president. I'm the treasurer of the Wareham Historical Society for the last 15 years, treasurer of the Toby Hospital Guild for the last 5 years, and treasurer of the Wareham Community Gardens for 5 years. And it's a task to keep each bank account correct, so I don't deposit one into the wrong bank. I'm also chair of the Conservation Commission, co-chair and treasurer of CPC, chair of Open Space, chair of Minot Forest, a member of Capital Planning, and a member of Affordable Housing Trust. One of the things I'd like to point out, I think from sewer commissioners, we have 3 critical tasks as sewer commissioners. One is develop a system that sewer charges are based on water usage. Number 2.
We're good on Facebook. I just checked.
Okay. I look for ways to allow the water pollution control facility to discharge treated water in excess of the current discharge limits that would flow into Agawam. That might mean a service discharge system or an outfall pipe into the canal. Without this increase of discharge, Wareham cannot move forward. And third, I think a critical thing is to find funding for the anticipated failures of the existing infrastructure, i.e. sewer pipes. And I thank you for your time. And for those that are into Star Wars, remember elections on the 4th, and may I say, may the 4th be with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Oh, and sorry, just to clarify for anyone watching tonight. So even though Sandy and Jim are technically running for 2 separate positions, we are just going to loop them together for time's sake here. So yeah, with that, I will ask Jim to start with his 2-minute opening statement.
Well, thank you, but that's a tough act to follow right there. I've been a sewer commissioner for 6 years now. We've got projects going to Sandy indicated that we need to continue with. Well, first of all, let me back up. I graduated from Wareham High, went to college, have a BS. Worked in the food service industry for my entire career. Owned Cranberry Cottage for a while. Excuse me. Been involved in more than one aspect of the town. I was on PruCom for 6 years, FinCom for 6 years, capital planning 12, and as a sewer commissioner for the last 6. I was also involved with the Wareham Alumni Association for 18 years. Other than that, that's pretty much it. You know, the projects that we've got, we have a sewer system in this town that's basically 50 years old, plus or minus, depending on what part of the town or what area you look at. The infrastructure is in difficult shape. It needs to be addressed, which we are trying to do as best we can as we can get money to do things. Our biggest priority really is outflow. What do we do with the treated product when it's done? Right now it goes into the Agawam River. We're limited on the amount, therefore the moratorium. We have options potentially, and I do mean potentially, not definitively, of groundwater discharge. We're exploring that option now, trying to find a place that's got the size, it's got the availability that we could do something like that. We're looking at talking to EPA to see whether or not they will increase the volume of our discharge. That's not necessarily an item that we're holding our hats on. Another option, obviously, is a pipeline to the canal. To me, in the long term, when I say long term, I'm looking at on a 100-year basis, not the typical nickel dime 20 years that most look at. But on a 100-year basis, that would take and provide the ability for Wareham to continue to grow. The only restriction we'd ever have there, as far as we can tell, would be the size of the plant and the number of places that are hooked up.
Thank you, Jim. That's 2 minutes.
Oh, sorry. I can ramble longer.
No, that's good.
Okay, well, thank you both. What we're going to do now is we're going to move into some questions. There's 6 questions for each of you. And what we'll do is, I noticed that a lot of you touched on some of these questions in your answers. So if you want to skip the question, if you feel you've already answered it enough in a previous question or your opening statement, just acknowledge that somehow, and we'll move on to the next candidate. So the first question is, what encouraged you to run for this position? And we'll start with Sandy. You have 1 minute.
Well, I was forced to become a sewer user, living along the Wareham River, and it was, well, let me have a say in what happens. So I said, there's an opening. After 3 years, no one stepped up. I said, okay, I'll go for the open position, and that's where I am.
Perfect. And Jim, same question to you. What encouraged you to run for this position? You have 1 minute.
I didn't like the way the last sewer infrastructure hookups to the different areas took place. I thought that the people in town that were affected by the potential hookups were kind of getting the short end of the stick, and felt that there had to be a better way and a little bit more knowledge required in order to get things done more practically at a more cost-effective basis. That's about it.
Thank you very much. So our next question is going to go to Sandy, and it is, if anything, what in your background lends itself to this position? You have 1 minute.
Nothing. I have a degree in physical education. I worked as a business analyst and designer of computer software systems for 30 some odd years. So nothing other than a desire to help the town.
I think that's a good answer. And same question to you, Jim. If anything, what in your background lends itself to this position? You have 1 minute.
I know how to use a kitchen sink. I know how to use the toilet. And that's probably the high points. Other than that, I mean, as I say, I was involved in food service. I've been involved in all of that. One of the places that I did work, I was involved with putting in an entire sewage system for the operation, which was quite extensive. But other than that, I have to, I don't want to sound like I'm playing catch up here, but I'm the same with Sandy. I mean, I don't really have a real axe. I just wanted to try to do something better for the town. It needs to improve, and anything anybody can do to help improve it, more than all in favor of it.
Great. Thank you very much. So what I'll do for this next question, I do feel like you both touched on it very well, but if either of you feel different, feel free to address it. So the question is, if anything, what have you done in your years prior to this election for the town? So do either of you want to add? I feel like you've both summed it up pretty well already, but do any of you want to talk more about it?
I covered what I'm still doing for the town. Yeah. So it's one of those things when you go by a Wareham Garden Club plant item on through town, I'm one of the weeders, so I do that for the town. I weed the gardens.
Well, I've done the things that I mentioned before. I also go to town meetings.
A very good thing.
And I think that's about it.
Awesome. So this is our next question is for both of you. We'll start with Sandy again. And the question is, in the past few years, we've seen many project proposals come and go for our town. So what should future development in our town look like, in your opinion? And Sandy, you have 1 minute to answer that.
We need to compromise, find a way that our individual homeowners are not the sole tax provider for the town. We have to bring in some more industry that can help us with our tax base. There has to be a compromise between land and economic development. There's been some very heated discussions regarding some overlay district. There's a 61A project that is causing angst for a lot of people. It's difficult to say there's an answer for anything, but it's all have to be considered, and compromise has to be considered, has to be followed, considered, too many considered, but that's it.
Perfect. And Jim, same question to you. In the past few years, we've seen many project proposals come and go for our town. So what should future development in our town look like, in your opinion? You have 1 minute.
I think we need more of an expansion of business. We've got to increase our tax base, as Sandy indicated. That's, everybody was aware of that. Right now, we run one tax base for the entire town. And the reason for that is we do not have enough business percentage-wise versus the total town in order to be able to divide into two separate rates. In order to eventually achieve that, you need more businesses. Businesses in the long run provide income for the town. Individuals' homes provide an expense for the town. So not that we don't need those, we do have to have those as well. We need a balance between the two. And we're not there yet.
Great. All right, so our next question, this one's going to go to Sandy first again. And the question is, one of the biggest challenges facing the town's sewer system is the limited capacity of the town's water treatment plant. At the moment, there's a moratorium on new sewer hookups, but that is a short-term solution. So what do you think the town's options are moving forward? And which one of these options do you think is the most doable or feasible? And you have 1 minute to answer that.
I think I covered that. We have a possibility of a surface groundwater discharge. There is the possibility of that outflow pipe into the canal. We have to do a better job of limiting fresh water or salt water from coming into the treatment plant to be processed. That costs us money every time someone's SEP pump goes off and is put into the sewer system that goes into the pollution control facility and gets treated. We have a lot of I&I around that allows surface water and salt water to be transferred to the pump station, to the facility, and get treated. And we can find a way of solving those two. We can increase our capacity of real product that needs to be treated as opposed to fresh or salt water. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Jim, same question to you. One of the biggest challenges facing the town sewer system is the limited capacity of the town's water treatment plant. At the moment, there's a moratorium on new sewer hookups, but that is a short-term solution. So what do you think the town's options are moving forward? And which one of these options do you think is the most feasible or doable? You have 1 minute.
Oh, as I mentioned earlier, the issues we have is the expulsion of the treated product. Right now it goes to the Agawam River. We'll address the EPA about increasing it. Groundwater discharge, I mentioned. pipeline to the canal I mentioned. And there's also the potential of satellite satellite treatment plants to be able to divert some of the flow that we have to a separate entity altogether. Those are all out there on the table. We're exploring them. And the question comes down to what are the numbers, and because some of the numbers are going to be astronomical. However, we need to look, as I said before, we've got to start looking in long range instead of what's for lunch tomorrow, in order to be able to make some realistic plans. The I&I problem that we have is just misdesign of the system in the beginning in certain areas of town. And we're living with that and trying to correct that, and that's been an uphill battle. That's about it. The plant, excuse me, if I might add, the plant has a capability of processing more than it does at the present time. The limitation is the expulsion. So.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And our final question for both of you, we'll start with Sandy once again. And that final question is, what will be your priorities as a sewer commissioner? So you have 1 minute.
Well, I think I listed number one, of course, is find a equitable sewer rate for our users based on water usage. I think that was number one. Number two is finding a way to increase the output from the facility. And number three is finding funds to take care of our aging pipes. That's it.
Thank you very much. And Jim, same question to you. What will be your priorities as sewer commissioner? You have 1 minute.
Can I just say ditto?
Yes.
I mean, she pretty well hit on everything that I'm looking at. That was one of the reasons the more equitable EDU rate all the way around is one of the big reasons that I got on in the first place. Water being probably the most realistic and equitable way to distribute those costs, but we're having an issue there.
Great. Thank you very much. And so that concludes our questions. So at this time, each of you will get your 2 minute closing statement opportunity. So Sandy, your 2 minutes starts now.
I really have nothing more to add than what I haven't already said, and I'm glad I went first, making Jimmy come up with different answers than mine. But thank you very much for having us. And remember, May 4th, and may the 4th be with you for those that know what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jim, same 2 minutes to you.
I don't know. I apologize that the makeup department didn't get in on me in time, so I look the way I do. Other than that, I just, would like to get back on and continue working in the same direction we've been working so far. Bring some of the things, hopefully, to fruition. The pipeline to the canal is something been working with for 6 years now, and I don't know whether or not that's ever going to be a reality, but for the benefit of the town as a whole, long range, that's probably the most practical outlook, unless some of these optional package treatment plants that we're exploring at the moment become more viable. Can't tell you anything else.
All right. Well, thank you very much to both of you for joining us tonight. I very much appreciate it, and I'm sure our voters do as well. So thank you both.
Thank you.
No
Thank
problem. My pleasure. And with that, we're going to transition into our next segment. So that segment is our...
Yeah, I'm going to be sending everyone over to the attendee side. Jim, you are welcome to stay and listen on in the attendee side. Alan will be up later for selectmen, and he'll come back as a panelist. And then I'm going to bring in the school committee people running for school committee.
Okay.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, I'm probably going to bow out now.
Bye now.
Thank you very much.
No problem. We have them all. All righty. Well, welcome everyone to our second segment of our Candidates Night, the school committee segment. For those of you watching at home, we have Apryl Rossi, the incumbent, joining us tonight, and we also have Brennan McKiernan and Jeff Swett joining us. So very similar to how the last segment was run, I'll ask the questions to each of you, and each of you will answer the same question. We'll go in order, and I'll say your name first and remind you of how much time you have to answer, and I'll interrupt if you go over that time, and that's about it. So we will start with opening statements from each of you, and I'm just going to go in the order that it is on my screen. So we will start with Ms. Rossi. You have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Hello, everyone. For those that don't know me, my name is Apryl Rossi. I am the current incumbent for this election. I have served on the school committee for the past 2 years and have really enjoyed my time getting to know a lot of the policies and procedures, and would love to continue in that role. I am a huge fan of the school district, my son being a student since the first grade in Wareham Public Schools. I've been a substitute teacher in the school system. I've been a coach and a community volunteer, which I'll get into my opening statement, so I'm not redundant. But I do look forward to running again and hopefully continuing to be a voice for the community.
Thank you very much. And same to you, Mr. McKiernan. You have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Brennan, you gotta check your mic. Nope.
hopefully we can figure out the microphone. It'll be a little easier for you to answer some of those questions. You may have to leave and come back and see if that fixes anything, but yeah, we're still not getting anything. Sorry. I'm just gonna move ahead and go to Mr. Swett now for his 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you, Andy, and good evening, Wareham. And thank you for taking the time to listen to your candidates for elective office this year. My name is Jeff Swett, and I have been a resident of Wareham since 1996. Even before retiring from my career in healthcare and education management in 2001, I realized that I wanted to start giving back to my community. I started by being a big brother through the Big Brother, Big Sister Association for a decade in the 1990s. During 2 decades of retirement, I have served in a variety of municipal and not-for-profit organizations in Wareham and the South Coast of Massachusetts. I feel privileged to have been able to do so and want to continue to do that as a member of the school committee again. I promise to serve with integrity, transparency, and dedication, and to use all of my life experiences to help make the education of Wareham's children the best it can be.
Thank you very much. All right, so we do have a few questions, quite a few, 10 to be exact for each of you. So we're gonna go through them. And again, similar to the last segment, if you feel you've already answered the question well enough, you can just yield your time and we'll move on. But so our first question is gonna go to Ms. Rossi. And that question is, what made you choose to run for school committee? And you have 1 minute.
So I have been a parent in town for many years. I was a volunteer. Originally, my first office, if you were, in Wareham education was I was a board member for the Wareham Elementary PTA. I was the corresponding secretary for that. I was also involved in the merge between the two. Started as the Deaconess Elementary PTA and merged with the Minot, forming the elementary PTA as a community. I was also on the middle school and high school PTA. I was a substitute teacher, like I said, at the middle school for a couple of years. I was a volunteer at the Boys and Girls Club. I was a board member for the Wareham Tigers Association for 7 years, as well as the chair coordinator and chair president for several years as well. I was a Little League parent. I was a JBA parent. I was an exchange student host family, sent my son on a student exchange to China. And I've been very involved with the youth in this town since I got here. I am a huge advocate for everyone who needs a voice, who feels that they don't have one. And I want to continue to support our kids. I think they are our greatest asset, as is evidenced with Indiana hosting this event this evening. I've known Indiana since I moved here. So it's great to see what our students are capable of and how they are taking a lead and taking a role in forming their own education and the direction that they want it to go. And I want to continue to encourage and push for that voice, as well as the voice and the directive of the community. And there are so many great people in this town and so many great opportunities. And sometimes I feel that having a perspective of a parent, someone who's been involved in every aspect of the kids in the town, is helpful in making sure that we have a well-rounded education for our kids.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the kind words too. So the same question goes to you, Mr. McKiernan. That question is, what made you choose to run for the office of school committee? And you have 1 minute to answer.
I think he's still having problems.
Yeah, you may want to try leaving the meeting and joining back. That might help something. Yes, he can. Christian, can he call you with the phone?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No. But he can click on the link with his phone.
Right. Yeah. So we'll have him try that next if this doesn't work. So while he does that, we are going to go to Mr. Swett. So that question is, what made you choose to run for the office of school committee? You have 1 minute to answer.
Thank you. Although I have spent 4 terms on the school committee during the past 2 decades, I realized that my passion for working to help Wareham's children has actually not been diminished by time. My position as chair of the new school building committee is coming to a close this year, and that will provide me more time to spend at school committee meetings and the various subcommittees associated with that responsibility. I've also been encouraged by friends and fellow citizens to seek the office again, and that has made me feel that the support needed to win another school committee election may very well exist. Finally, and most importantly, this post-pandemic period, boy, I hope it's post, for public education will require lots of decisions to be made about how best to educate our children and how to spend the extra money that the federal government is providing to help students and educators recover from a very difficult period. Candidly, I want to be a part of that discussion, and I think I can help make those decisions good ones.
Thank you very much. So what we'll do too is when Mr. McKiernan gets back, we'll go backwards and have him answer those questions, and I'll keep track of the ones he didn't answer, and he'll get a minute for each of those. So yeah, we're going to move on to our next question, and we're going to start with Ms. Rossi. And the next question is, what in your background lends itself to this position? You have 1 minute.
So besides the boards and various children-led committees that I have mentioned previously, I've been connected to the town for about 10 years. I had a 15-year background in corporate and marketing and public relations, dealing with social media, dealing with different ways to sort of get the word out and embrace community conversation. And before transitioning and into the beauty industry, where again, it's all about talking to people and being a good listener. And I try to listen and be objective when I am taking information in. And I try to look at everything from a well-rounded perspective. I try to look at things from both sides and play devil's advocate. I always try to be fair and try to take in as much information as possible before making a decision. And I try to do so thoughtfully, transparently, and I would like to continue my proactive as opposed to reactive approach, and continue to use everything that I've ever experienced, both as a parent, both as a person, as a resident of the town, as a community member, to continue to bring my knowledge, whether it's just in helping to bridge that gap between community involvement or just a parent's perspective to the committee, and continue to help our district grow and continue to improve and be better.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Swett, same question for you. What do you want to see, or that's the next question, sorry. What in your background lends itself to this position? You have 1 minute to answer.
Thank you again, Indy. In addition to my prior 12 years on the school committee, I have also been educated about municipal finance by my 6 years on the town's finance committee. I have seen what works and what doesn't work to improve education in Wareham, and how the school budget fits into the overall town budget and is supported by the state's Chapter 70 program. In addition, I spent years on the Mass Association of School Committees Board of Directors, lobbying the state legislators and officials. I've also kept close to students and parents as the coach of the high school girls tennis team for the past 17 years, and volunteering as a school bus driver when requested. I have built and managed elementary schools when I was president of a charter school management company. Finally, I've committed many years of my time and resources as part of the governance of the YMCA South Coast, including chair of the board of the Gleason Y and the overall YMCA South Coast Association.
Thank you very much. Mr. McKiernan.
I don't even see a mic option.
Sorry. So I said this before you left, or after you left, that what I'm just doing is keeping track of the questions, and we'll keep track of which ones you didn't answer, and we'll find a way to get your answers to the questions out somehow to the public. And hopefully we can figure out the audio issue too, so you have a chance to answer some of them, but we're still not hearing anything. So hopefully we'll figure that out. But we will move on to the next question now.
Really sorry.
Brennan, just respond to me. 1 second. Brennan, just respond to me in instant messenger.
All right, so we're going to move to our third question. And that third question, we'll start with Ms. Rossi. And that question is, what do you want to see changed in the school system, and how would you contribute to be part of that change? And you'll have 1 minute to answer.
Okay, great. Thank you. So what I would like to see change in the school system is just to continue moving forward and in positive ways, to continue to take constructive criticism and to take any past failures that may have been, or that parents or community members have taken issue with, and address them head on, and figure out the source of either the rumors that had led people to have a district for the district that caused them to change their minds about Wareham and school choice to other districts, and really just open up a conversation so that we can get everybody on the same page, and hopefully try to reinstate the confidence in our district that I've had, and that I know so many other people have had. But you can't change how somebody else views something, but I think opening up conversations and not getting defensive, but using that as a tool to move forward and really just build from that going forward, especially with the building of our new elementary school and all of the great programs that we have at the high school with the IB program and the AP program and the dual enrollment. I think we have so many great opportunities for the students in this town. And I think that trying to bridge that gap for those middle of the road students that may feel that their needs may not be being tended to. So just opening up conversations and making sure that we're addressing any issues that any parent or any student are having. I feel like most issues tend to be from breakdowns in communication. And I think that the clearer we're able to communicate with the community and with our families and with the people in the town, that will clear up a lot of misjudgments and try to get us to move forward in a new place, in a new in a better facility once we get past the COVID constrictions that we've had over the past year and a half.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Swett, same question to you. What do you want to see changed in the school system, and how would you contribute to be a part of that change? You have 1 minute.
In talking to parents, it is very clear from their children's experiences during the remote and hybrid instruction over the past year that some students have done really well, but others have not. These unequal experiences go beyond those students with special needs and individual education plans. Sometimes doing well was a function of family support, but it was also the case that the use of technology had a disparate impact on learning. The individualization of curriculum and instruction through the seamless use of technology, if approved by the school committee, will be a part of the strategic plan for Wareham Public Schools. I am privileged to be a part of that strategic plan. I want to be a part of that approval process, which will mean that the schools must have the operational budget and the human resources to make that happen.
Thank you very much. So our next question, we'll start with Ms. Rossi again. And the question is, what grant resources would you like to have Wareham apply for, if any, of course? You have 1 minute to answer that question.
As many as possible. I know that a lot of our amazing teachers are also excellent grant writers, and I know that a lot of programs that have been awarded to our school and that we've been able to enjoy are because of the dedication of our staff and our teachers who have written for particular grants. What I would like to see is a list of grants and which ones we've been granted, which ones we've been denied. If there are reasons, for example, what those reasons are, so we can learn from that and continue to apply if it's applicable. Continue to bring in as many grants as possible for our district, because that's a huge benefit. And I know that we have a lot of dedicated teachers. I would also like to know if it's possible for a full-time grant.
Ms. Rossi, I'm gonna interrupt you. I hate to interrupt.
On staff to sort of proofread or help the teachers who are applying for grants, help them move forward with that process, that have had experience in grant writing, to make sure that we are dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's to get us as much as possible for the kids.
Thank you. So we're having it seems like you're having a little internet connection issue. Yeah, your picture's frozen and your audio is also very glitchy. So I mean, I can have you, if you'd like, we can go back. Yeah, whatever works out best for whatever works out best.
Are you able to hear me more clearly without my video?
It's still a little glitchy. So
I know that this tends to happen during school committee meetings. Also, my internet is not my biggest fan, so hopefully it will level itself out and we will be able to continue without further technical issue.
Yeah, and if not, we'll let you know, and you might have to try calling in or doing something like that, just so we can make sure everyone can hear you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll keep you posted. Thank you. Mr. Swett, the question for you is, what grant resources would you like to have Wareham apply for?
Indiana, one
Yep.
second.
Yep.
Brennan, can I talk?
Can anyone hear me?
Ah, yes.
Excellent.
All right. Maybe show us your picture, but talk on your phone.
Okay, I'm gonna try that.
Well, we lost one and gained another. No. So, what I'll do is we're going to go to Mr. Swett to answer that question, and then we'll go to Mr. McKiernan to answer the same question, and then we'll just have you answer the questions that you missed, and you'll get a minute to do each of those, and we'll just do those all together to make it easier. Does that sound good?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so Mr. Swett, sorry for the interruption. The question is, what grant resources would you like to have Wareham apply for, if any? And you'll have a minute to answer that.
I hope everybody appreciates that this is what parents, grandparents, and teachers and children experienced all year. So my sympathies to Apryl and Brennan. The federal title grants, they're called Title I, II, and IV, are extremely important and must be a part of every school year resources, as they provide support for literacy, math, professional development, and even financial support for our high school students who take AP and IB exams. The State Student Opportunity Act is also important because it also helps with literacy by giving elementary teachers paraprofessional help. The 21st Century Grant is particularly important this year because it helps with school, after school, and summer programs. Perhaps the most important new state grant is called GLEAM, which, believe it or not, everything has an acronym, doesn't it? Stands for Growing Literacy Equity Across Massachusetts, as it specifically provides financial support for early literacy efforts. But the federal IDA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, grants support for special education and is essential to efforts to help our students who are having more difficulty learning. It is important to remember, however, that all of these grants complement our school budget and do not replace the regular financial support provided by the state and town.
Thank you very much. And Mr. McKiernan, we'll go with that question to you. And that question was, what grant resources would you like to have Wareham apply for, if any? And you'll have a minute to answer that.
Well, actually, Mr. Swett mentioned several of the ones that I was thinking of as well. And I think Apryl touched on it a little bit, that really any possible grant that we can apply for, we should. One of the biggest barriers to education is funding, is finding money for teachers, for resources. So anything that we can do to, take some of the burden away from the taxpayer and get that extra money in, I think is important. I think that one of the other things we should do is make sure that we're utilizing some of the grants that we already have, and really focusing on our school budget to make sure that we're getting the best value for our dollar, that we're getting the most out of the money that we're getting in there.
Great, thank you very much. And then, as I mentioned, what we're gonna do is just for you, we're gonna go backwards in those questions, and I'm gonna ask you the three that you missed, and you'll have a minute to answer each of those. So the question for you is, what do you want to see changed in the school system, and how would you contribute to be a part of that change? And you have 1 minute.
Well, one of the things that I would really like to focus on is, hold on one second. One of the things I would really like to focus on is building the community back together. The change I'd like to see is the school become a real basis of operations for its students. I want to see all the groups working together. We've talked a few times offline about, ideas that I had with Wareham, helping Wareham, working with DECA. As a former DECA student myself, I'm a big fan of the organization, and I'd like to see them working with organizations like the Tigers or JDA, the cleanup efforts that happen in town. I really want unity in town, and that's how we rebuild the community, is by getting everyone working together. There's so many groups with parallel goals that if we all got together on the same page, we could accomplish a lot more. And that's what I'd like to see with the school, is just to see the town getting behind the school and getting behind the students and really supporting each other. And that's how we're going to build. So that's what I'd like to see different, is just to see more participation between the people of the town and the schools. I think that the schools want it. I think particularly the students want it. Every week in the paper, you see a story of something amazing that a student is doing. And unfortunately, it's usually missed because it's behind an article about something bad with the school. One of the old adages in media is, if it bleeds, it leads. So a negative story is always going to take precedence, but there's so much positivity and so many good things happening at Wareham that I think we just need to focus on those, really support them, and put our efforts and energies into helping those grow.
Thank you. And the next question for you is, what in your background lends itself to this position, if anything? And you'll have 1 minute.
There's nothing really specific, just my desire to help. I was a Boy Scout growing up, and I've always participated in town events. When I was a kid, like the church would have a lawn party every year, and my family, me and my brother, we would always be the ones running the prizes, from the raffle out to the people. And I just, seeing those kind of things and having memories of those growing up, watching people work together and seeing the amazing things that the town can do, that's really what motivated me to do this. I mean, I have years of customer service experience, so I'm used to working with people and trying to find solutions. I was formerly store manager of Radio Shack before it went under a couple of years ago, and we increased our sales. We were, out of 16 stores in our district, we were 15th when I started, and we were 4th when I left out of 19 stores. And that was just from instilling customer service. A lot of people may recognize me from there. I know that's one of the earlier questions, to introduce myself. I've been in town for a long time. My family's been in town for a long time. My grandmother graduated from Wareham High. My father graduated from Wareham High. My uncle, my brother, myself. My son is currently a student at Wareham High. And I'm not alone in that. There's a lot of families and, last names that you see over and over again. And, it's time for us to step up and really kind of take charge of our town and turn it back into the town that we love. And that's why I'm running. That's why I'm doing this. And as far as my background goes, it's just, I think I'm very good at compromise. I'm very good at problem solving. I believe in working together. That's really the focus of what I do, is just trying to put myself in the other person's shoes and find common goals and solutions. Compromise is a word that has been kind of forgotten when it comes to politics. And I think that we really need to bring that back together, especially since we are such a great small town, small community. We're all neighbors. We're all families. We're all friends. So let's act like it and really do the best we can with it.
Thank you very much. And the next question for you is the last one in your little parade of questions we're throwing at you. The question is, what made you choose to run for school committee? And you'll have 1 minute to answer.
Well, like I said, I grew up here and I am a parent. My son goes to Wareham High. He's currently in the 8th grade. Oh my God. Last year, I suffered some tragedy. Unfortunately, I lost both my mother and my brother during the pandemic. My brother had cancer. My mom had dementia. And when they passed on, I inherited my mother's house, which is the house I grew up in. And as a homeowner and taxpayer in this town, I decided that I'm going to make this the best town that it can possibly be. And that's the town that I grew up in. And, one of my fondest memories is the 250th bicentennial celebration of this town. I was about maybe 9 years old. And it just seemed like the entire town came together. the entire town, every part that you went to had some historical thing or some event, a ride, something, an event going on. It really brought us all together. And there's so many examples in this town of when we've come together. I think of the Scotty Montero Foundation. I knew Scotty. I used to work with him at Mark Anthony's. Trey Strong, which was a young man. I think he had leukemia, but when he passed away, the town just so quickly came together
Sorry to
and
interrupt, but
donated.
this time, sorry.
Oh, no problem.
All right. And now we're all caught up. We're going to move on to our next question, and we'll start with Ms. Rossi. And that question is, actually, can we, Ms. Rossi, is everything working?
I hope so.
Yes. Okay. Cool. All right. So the question is, Wareham schools offer a number of programs both during the day and after the bell that allow students to study for advanced classes, participate in outdoor activities, etc. Are there programs that you think are underutilized or not well known? And are there programs that you would like to see added to the roster, either for students who want more challenging academics or students who may be struggling? And you'll have 1 minute to answer that question.
Okay, thank you. I think we do offer a lot of amazing programs for our advanced student population. And I know that we're doing a lot, especially in the younger grades at DECUS with early interventions and with literacy as a focus. I would really love to see options offered to those middle of the road students, stuff that will get them more engaged and try to use their student voice a little bit more. I know that at the middle school, they're really doing some great things with student voice, and I'd like to see that rolled out to both the MINA and the DECUS populations as well. I know that when a child is 5 or 6 or 7 years old, they may not feel like their voice is important, but their voice is important. And as young as that, they should have a say in their education, in their extracurriculars, and have a guided teacher or a mentor be able to tailor their ideas and have it fit into the educational mold that it should fit into to help them grow, but help build their confidence so that they're never afraid to use their voice in advocating for their own education. I think that having some breakouts or even some in-school sort of focus groups where you pick some of those kids that may not join clubs or may not be involved in sports and really try to find out why, so that we can really try to work with the families to help get them engaged. Is it because they have trouble with transportation? Is it work with carpooling? Is it because they feel shy or they're afraid of not being accepted in one particular group that they may feel that they want to join? So I really think that by focusing on the kids that aren't involved and finding the why is going to be huge in helping them take control of their own education and giving those students a voice.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Swett, same question to you. Wareham schools offer a number of programs both during the school day and after the bell that allow students to study for advanced classes, participate in outdoor activities, etc. Are there programs you think are underutilized or not well known? And are there programs that you would like to see added to the roster, either for students who want more challenging academics or students who may be struggling? You have 1 minute.
I actually think the Wareham Public Schools is doing a great job. If I was going to pick one thing, it would be, I am particularly supportive of vocational programs being added to the high school syllabus, with the great success of the culinary class as a prime example. The admissions process to Upper Cape Voc Tech may change as of next year. Commissioner Riley is trying to make that change. But as of now, too many students who want to learn a trade are denied access to Upper Cape, especially those who do not want to take advantage of the AP and IP classes that frankly make the high school a remarkable pre-college experience. That is part of the individualization that needs to take place to make school a rewarding place for every student. We cannot allow the absence of these vocational courses and the inability to gain entrance to Voc Tech to be a reason for not graduating from high school.
Thank you very much. And Mr. McKiernan, same question to you. Are there programs you think are underutilized or not well known in our schools? And are there programs that you would like to see added to the roster, either for students who want more challenging academics or students who may be struggling? And you'll have 1 minute.
Yes, I think one of the programs that I'm aware of is the baccalaureate program, which allows you to, I believe, dual enroll so that by the time you graduate from Wareham High School, you could already be a sophomore, or I heard even as much as a junior in college, upon high school graduation. And that's an amazing program that I think it's known, but I don't think it's well known or pushed enough. I think we do need to focus on that. As far as other things, and the other candidates did touch on this, I'd like to offer, it's often talked about, but I don't see why we can't implement it, is a life skills class. One where people can learn the basics of how to balance your checkbook. We used to call it home ec, but where you can learn to cook, where you can learn to run a household, where you can learn to run a business, where you can, learn some of these kind of functioning adult skills that have fallen by the wayside and have been replaced by, focusing on learning about new technologies. I mean, there's things that my son can do that I had no idea how to do at his age, but at the same time, there's things that I feel like he should know that I kind of dropped the ball and he doesn't know about yet. And I'd like to see some kind of classes offered that can, fill those knowledge gaps. I'd also like to see students be able to kind of pick their own curriculum. One thing we've learned through this pandemic is that there's new ways to educate ourselves, whether it's through Zoom meetings, online classes, online, it doesn't have to be a traditional classroom setting. And hopefully students can find a way to kind of create their own extracurricular curriculum.
Thank you very much. And just a reminder to our candidates, you can rebuttal a question or a statement from a candidate. So if you do have something to add to a statement that's said by one of the other candidates, just raise your hand on the Zoom and use that raise hand feature, and we'll call on you. Ms. Rossi, you have a rebuttal, so you'll have 1 minute to do so.
It's not really a rebuttal, but I did just want to let Mr. McKiernan know that the high school does offer a financial literacy class, and in the last couple of years, it has been made a requirement for graduation that all students do take that, where they are learning those life skills and working on checks and balances and applying for financial aid for students and things like that. So that is something that the high school, having used the student voice, has implemented over the last couple of years. So they are moving forward in a good direction with those kinds of classes, as well as many vocational opportunities that they are also branching out in at the high school.
Just to reply to that, that's very great to hear. And he had spoken about programs that we need to kind of put more emphasis on. Like I said, I know there's a lot of great things going on at Wareham High School, and I just as you just educated me about that, I want to make sure that everybody knows those kind of things are available. We really need to be promoting that, so that parents know. I didn't know how extensive that program was, and it's excellent to hear. That's amazing. I just think that more people need to know about it, because I think that we need to change the perception of Wareham High School as not offering, the educational opportunities that you can get out of town, when absolutely we already have the tools that we need. And as a member of school committee, thank you so much for bringing on. I know you were probably instrumental in bringing that program around, so thank you.
And Mr. Swett, you'd like a rebuttal? You have 1 minute to do so.
Once again, it's not a rebuttal, but just to add, Cape Cod 5 has been annually doing something for seniors, which basically tells them what it's going to take to become an independent adult, and specifically the costs of becoming an independent adult. I and others volunteers have done that for many years, and I think it's particularly valuable to our seniors as they're contemplating what it's like to be outside of their parents' homes.
I'd like to see it be something that starts even earlier than senior year. You know, something that we can offer as young really as the students feel that they're able to do it, so that it's not something they just learn senior year, but can start earlier and earlier to start gaining these skills and working and, you know, even teaching them to each other. I'd like to see a peer tutoring group also happen where the students can kind of get together and help each other out by learning these things. But these are all great ideas, and it's really good to know. So thank you.
Thank you. So all rebuttals have been used, and we will move on to the next question. We will start with Ms. Rossi. The question is, if you had been the primary decision maker for Wareham schools over the past year and a half, would you have done anything differently? And why or why not? You have 1 minute.
I do not envy anyone over the last year who has had to have the burden of making decisions in the midst of a global pandemic, from the governor to local bodies of government. It has been a damned if you do and a damned if you don't situation, where no matter what decisions are made, you're not going to make everyone 100% happy. And that's just the nature of the last year. I do think that Wareham Public Schools really jumped on quickly to in the last spring to get us from in-person to remote in a week. We were so far ahead of the game in making sure that we had a 1-to-1 Chromebook ratio, that we made sure that for the fall that we had iPads for the kindergarten students so that they were able to be online and engaged. And I know it was not ideal for every student. I know there were challenges. I know that not every student did well, my son included. My son was not a student that performed well without that continuity and that structure of being in a classroom setting. And as a working single parent, to not be there to police a teenager or be side by side with some of the younger kids, I do understand many parents' frustrations trying to figure out having to work. And I understand the administrative frustrations trying to figure out what's going to be best, not only for the students and to continue the rigorous education that we offer in Wareham, but to put the safety and well-being of the students, of the staff, and of the community first and foremost. So I think that given the way that we handled the pandemic as a district in talking to other people in other districts, I think Wareham did a wonderful job, and I'm grateful that I was not at the helm of having to make some of those very weighty decisions and have to take either the praise or the backlash, whichever the chips may fall in different people's opinions of it, because it is such a divisive, it's become such a divisive issue, the way that the pandemic is handled. And I think that we did our best as a district to keep things as positive and as student-centric and as health-centric as possible for everybody involved. So I think that I don't know that I would have changed anything, but I certainly do not envy, like I said, anyone in a position to have had to make those decisions.
Thank you very much. Mr. McKiernan, we'll go to you next. The question is, if you had been the primary decision maker for Wareham Public Schools over the past year and a half, would you have done anything differently? Why or why not? You have 1 minute.
I want to echo a lot of what Apryl said, that I'm very glad that I wasn't the person having to make those decisions. This is truly an unprecedented situation. And I think that the administration should be applauded for doing as much as it did. You know, in hindsight, 2020, there's a lot of communication issues that I think could have been handled better. Perhaps organizing a centralized resource instead of people getting information from this page on Facebook or through this site or this page, or, you know, all the different sources. This is one of the questions I think we have coming up as far as communication and transparency. I think we did the best that we could as a town and as a school district. I think that we handled the situation, again, not 100% perfect for everybody, but it took care of the majority of students as best as it could. So I don't think I really would have changed anything other than to try to emphasize a little bit more on communication and garner a little bit more parental input, and make sure that those parents knew they not only that they had a voice, but that they was being heard, as far as and seeing that, you know, they were being listened to and put into use. And I think, but no, I mean, I think we did.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Swett, same question to you. If you had been the primary decision maker for Wareham Public Schools over the past year and a half, would you have done anything differently? Why or why not? And you have a minute to answer that.
Like my fellow candidates, I felt a little uncomfortable answering this question, sort of like being a Monday morning quarterback. But the truth is, the answer is yes. And I'm saying yes because I know that a wealthy school district did in fact do something different because they had the resources. Specifically, I mentioned to administration last summer an idea, and they expressed enthusiasm for it, but the added costs of implementation made it too difficult. What would it involve? It would have involved splitting the classes in two, thereby cutting class sizes in half and allowing appropriate social distancing. And then when combined with masking and enhanced ventilation, it would have actually created a safe environment for students, educators, and support staff. The length of the school day would have been the same for educators, but only essential curriculum would have been taught, and more elective curriculum could have been done online, and students would have seen, and this is the most important reason for why I think this is something we perhaps could have done if we'd had the money. Students would have seen their teachers every single day. Yes, the cost of transportation would have been considerably higher, but the positive impact on students would have been, as they say, priceless and worth every dollar in added costs. So I'm disappointed that we couldn't do it. It's something that we could have done if we'd had the resources. And I dislike intensely that a rich district was able to do something that we were unable not to do.
Thank you very much. My next question is, we're going to start with Ms. Rossi. And the question I have is, recently, many student advocacy groups in Massachusetts have been exploring the possibility of working to give the student representative on school committee more power. Bourne allows their student representative to vote, and the vote is reflected in the minutes, but it cannot be a tiebreaker and is technically a non-binding vote. Other students in Boston are working with the mayor and Massachusetts legislature to change the article completely and allow the student to vote with no limitations, and their school board in Boston is in support of it. Would you support or be against something like this, and why? You have a minute to answer.
So for the past 2 years, I have been the MASC Resolutions Committee delegate for the Massachusetts Association of School Committees at their conference. And one of the resolutions for this year was actually for allowing children as young as 16 to have a vote in town election and or school committee based elections. I think that the students that are generally presented, Emily Roberge, for example, our current student representative, is a very well-informed young lady. She's very involved. And I believe that historically, most of those students do have a significant grasp on what their student voice would be. I think involving them in votes, whether that vote actually counts or we just get to take into consideration how it would affect a student currently matriculated in the district, I think that's a huge asset for us because all of our decisions ultimately affect the students. And I think, like I said before, that the student voice is vastly important. And I know that this would only be a representation of the high school, but maybe that's something where we could look into having student liaisons for the other schools as well. It may be a little bit more difficult to understand the legislature of a town body for a lower elementary student, but as they start studying more forms of government in school and elementary school, I think that it would be something to look at, to have not only a student representative just of the high school, but perhaps opening that up and seeing how our decisions are affecting the students on every school level, and possibly, using that information to help us make our decisions, as opposed to having it be a weighted vote. So I do think that it is something I would be interested in looking into and exploring further. And again, just going with my my platform of every student having a voice and being able to let us know how our decisions are ultimately affecting them. You're muted, Indy.
Thank you. I just realized. Thank you very much. Mr. McKiernan, same question to you. Recently, many student advocacy groups in Massachusetts have been exploring the possibility of working to give the student representative on their school committees more power. Bourne Public Schools allows their student representative to vote, and the vote is reflected in the minutes, but it cannot be a tiebreaker and is technically a non-binding vote. Other students in Boston are working with the mayor and Massachusetts legislature to change the article completely and allow the student to vote with no limitations, and their school board in Boston is in support of it. Would you support or be against something like this, and why? You have 1 minute.
I would absolutely support this. I think that it's a great idea. One of the biggest parts of what I'd like to see happen in the schools is for students to have a little bit more ownership and agency over their education and over the direction their school goes in. I would love for a student representative to not only have a vote, but have a vote that counts. I want these kids to know, these students to know that their voice matters. It's not just a symbolic thing. It counts. And so that these students that really want to participate in this will actually work towards getting onto this council and getting that position, so that they can, let their voice be heard. I'd also like to see something happen where maybe starting at grade 6, there is a, for lack of a better term, student council, where one representative from each grade meets separately from the school committee to talk about issues, to talk about things they'd like to see, and then have maybe 1 or 2 representatives that come to the school committee meeting and present that, and actually know that they have at least one vote to give them, to give that voice some weight and to give it, to make those things happen. So I'm absolutely for student representatives having a vote that matters.
Thank you very much. And we're going to, just for time's sake, from now on, we're going to start, or I'm going to start asking if you need the question repeated before you answer. So hopefully that'll cut out a little bit of time. So Mr. Swett, do you need the question repeated?
No problem.
Okay, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. Well, the short answer is I have no problem giving the student representative a vote, but I think this actually misses the point. The truth is that most school committee votes are unanimous. And so having a vote is not really all that important. The other truth is that after a student gets, certainly into high school, they really are the customer even more than the parent, although the parent should always be considered the customer. And so what's really important is not whether the student representative has a vote, but whether the student representative is really encouraged to express his or herself. And after he or she does the rest of the school committee really listen? So I have no problem if the student representative gets a vote, as long as it's permitted by law. But even if the student doesn't get a vote, we have to really listen to students.
Thank you very much. All right. And for time's sake, we'll ask one more final question. And that question is, we'll start with Ms. Rossi for this question. The question is, it seems as though many residents feel that they are not always getting accurate information from the town on certain matters, which has built a big disconnect between our town government and our citizens. Do you have suggestions for improving communication between the school committee and residents? You have 1 minute.
Thank you. This is actually something that I've brought up several times, in that times are changing, and most of our parents and our people, as sad as it is to say, their go-to for information is Facebook. A lot of people aren't checking their emails. A lot of people aren't engaging in blog posts or things of that nature. And it's not that they're not well written. It's not that they're not informative. It's people are so quick to go to Facebook or Twitter where they're getting their information in 140 characters. They're scrolling through 10 seconds on their lunch break or when they get a break at work, and more people are spending more time on those platforms. I think that having communication be transparent and quick to the point, very black and white, and making sure that we're always proactive and not reactive, that we're addressing issues head on and we're not having to backtrack and follow up with why wasn't this information presented in the timely fashion, or why are we finding out about this through the rumor mill or through another parent, etc., which are things that we've all heard, I'm sure, being involved in as many different organizations in the town as everyone on this panel is involved. I think that working with focus groups and trying to figure out the best ways for information to get presented, what is going to engage people, what is going to get them to want to become involved. As we saw in town meeting, that a lot of the grassroots campaigning to get people involved in that vote was Facebook, was posting, was different groups and different sides and presenting information. And that garnered over 1,000 people to town meeting, which I believe might be a Wareham record. So in the middle of a pandemic, no doubt. So I think that utilizing what is currently the go-to for information and trying to present it in a respectful, authentic, clear, and unbiased way to make sure that if someone does have an issue, that that issue is addressed head on and addressed publicly, and then if need be to take it offline to continue to work out details of a resolution, but that we are attempting to show that we're being forthcoming, that we're being transparent, that we're being as communicative as possible and putting things out there. I know a lot of our older population still continues, as I do too, the Wareham Week newspaper, which is a great weekly resource, or the Wareham Courier.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but that is time.
Oh, I'm so sorry. But again, just hoping that, just clear and concise and trying to find what works best.
Thank you. Mr. McKiernan, same question to you. Would you like it repeated?
No, thank you. I'd like to kind of continue on with what Apryl was saying, like, Facebook and the internet in general was meant to be this great communications tool. And one of the problems is it's now a fractured source of information. There's so many different sources you can go to. Like even on Facebook, I started a page last year called Wareham Helping Wareham. And one of my rules was no politics can be discussed. You can mention an event, but I don't want any discussions about it because it instantly devolves into, well, I heard this from here and that from there, and it goes downhill very quickly. So I think that the best way that we could do it is to create and endorse and reinforce one central hub, one place, one location where information can be talked about, brought up, where information can be disseminated. But it's got to be one place. It's got to be one go-to source, because having it spread across different pages and various sites and different sources, it's the old telephone game. You hear one thing, when you get repeated, something slightly changed. Especially with political discussions, the little nuances can really make a difference when you're talking about issues people are very passionate about, like their kids. So, I mean, you see a lot of fights break out online over, just little subtle changes in the information and finding out which one was correct, which one was right. So we do need one central place to get all of our information from.
Thank you. And Mr. Swett, same question to you. Would you like it repeated?
All good, Indy. Thank you.
All right, you have 1 minute.
So the truth is that perhaps never before, parents and grandparents are really busy, and involvement takes time. The first thing that has to happen is that every principal, every assistant principal, every department head, every teacher has to make it clear to every parent and guardian of a child that being contacted about their child's education is a positive and a critical way of making sure that they're meeting the needs of their child and their children. If that doesn't happen, frankly, involvement in a school committee meeting is not all that important. Having said that, I've always admired people who take the time to come to public participation. And I'm also very appreciative every time I get an email in the past from parents in particular. But if I got an email from a high school student, I'd be even more thrilled. So that kind of communication is really important. And finally, I would remind people that the budget hearing is one of the most important things that a parent can do, because that's your opportunity to actually have an interactive moment with the school committee that really, really matters to the resources that your teachers and principals have to educate your children. So frankly, it starts with involving the parents in the individual education of their children, which is why individualization is my theme for my campaign. Thank you, Indy.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all of you. At this time, we'll go through and begin our closing statements. So we'll start with Ms. Rossi. You have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
So I just really want to thank the WCTV and Indiana for putting this candidates night together. I know that normally we would be in a more in-person setting and we would be able to sort of engage with each other more. So in one hand, I'm thankful that we have the technology to still be able to do something to put everyone who's running out to the public, and hopefully that the community is involved and is watching this or will watch the replay of this and make themselves their own informed decisions. Having been on the school committee the past 2 years, I would love to continue my work there and continue to try to do as much good as possible. My focus has always been the students, and the students first and foremost. I think the kids in our town have a lot going for them, and I think that there's always opportunity to reach those students that aren't necessarily like Indiana and involved in every club and sport and organization and volunteer opportunity known to man. Some kids need a little bit more of a push, or even just a little bit of a dig to find out what's going to motivate them. And I would love to see those kids that are, like I said, that middle of the road where they're not really engaged, and figure out the why and work to get all of our students at least engaged in one thing, just anything, whether it's a gaming club, whether it's, you know, a sport or an opportunity to volunteer for something that they're passionate about, or figuring that out. And again, just utilizing our student voice, because our kids are going to be their own biggest advocates. And the sooner that we can teach them to do that, the better. I want to continue to be a voice for the community when people have questions, and know that I have no problem being open and transparent, and will answer whatever question is thrown at me, or have it asked at a school committee meeting if they're not able to come to a public participation when they've seen the agenda ahead of time. I think that our district has, like I said, so much going for it. And as someone who's been involved in so many organizations with the diverse youth of our community, I think that we really have a lot to grow from, and I think we have a lot to improve. Not that we're not doing well now, but we can always do better. That's the life cycle of every human, is to take those small changes and those small things and those small involvements. And
I'm sorry to cut you off again, but that is time.
Well, thank you again.
Thank you. And Mr. McKiernan, you have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Okay, in closing, I'd just like to say what I would like to do if elected to the school committee is use this as an opportunity to rebuild our community. We have a lot of great kids in our school. We have a lot of great resources at our school. We don't really need to look for more. We need to just work with the tools that we have, because we have the tools to make this a better, more unified community that is offering the best choices for our students. Our students are amazing. Every week you'll see what these kids are doing, what they're going out there and doing, and we need to get behind them and support that. We need to give them agency and ownership in what they do, and support them in every way we possibly can. And if elected to school committee, that's something that I'd really like to do, is make the school a central hub for the town, for us to get behind events, everything. You know, we've talked about sports, but the drama club, the key club, the DECA, the home show that you guys do every year. Events like that used to be a lot bigger deal in town, and I think that we can get back to doing that again, and it's to everybody's benefit that we do. It makes us a better, stronger place to live, and I look forward to working with, you know, the members of the school committee. When I announced my candidacy, I had several people, selectmen and whatnot, that reached out to me. So, I mean, I know there's a sense of teamwork out there, and I just want to expand that to the whole town and really reflect that Wareham's such an amazing place to live. And it starts with us students.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Swett, you have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Thank you, Indy. First, thank you again, Wareham, for actually taking the time to watch and listen tonight. And thank you, Indy and Christian and the rest of WCTV staff for making this happen. There has been a lot of talk about heroes over the past year, but I have heard too little about the parents, grandparents, guardians, and teachers who combined to prevent a lost year for the children of this country. Thank you, Wareham, for overcoming a tragic 100-year event on behalf of our children. Also, as we prepare to open our new elementary school, under budget and ahead of schedule, I feel like I represent the senior citizens who have not forgotten the voters who have honored the social contract between generations to educate the next generation. How did you do this? You dug deep and actually approved the debt exclusion to make the new school possible. I am proud to be a resident of Wareham, and I ask for your support on May 4th.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you to all of you. I'm a student myself, as you all know, and I'm very particularly concerned with the school committee at most times. So this conversation and this dialogue tonight was very helpful and pleasing to hear. And I wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Thank you, all of you.
Thank you.
Of course. And with that, we'll transition into our third and final segment, the Board of Selectmen. So we'll be right back with that.
So we have Alan Slavin, Glenn Lawrence,
How do we expand this to the whole city?
Patricia Wurtz.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for sticking with us for our third and final segment here, which is the Board of Selectmen. Our three candidates tonight joining us are Alan Slavin, Glenn Lawrence, and Tricia Wurtz. So thank you all for joining us.
You're welcome.
All right, so we have a lot of questions to get through that our voters want you guys to answer, but we will begin with opening statements from each of you. You'll have 2 minutes to speak this opening statement. And I'm going to go in the order that I see on my screen, and that will be the order we do throughout the night. So to start, Mr. Slavin, you have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you. Good evening. I could list all the completed projects I have brought to the town, but that is in the past. What is important is what I will accomplish today and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lawrence, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. For those of you who haven't met me, I'm sure you can tell right away from the accent that I'm not originally from Wareham. I'm actually a transplant about 5.5 years ago. The company I work for currently, a global manufacturer, their corporate headquarters are in Walpole, and they relocated us up here about 5.5 years ago. At that time, we chose to live in Wareham, and in the course of my life, I just felt the need to give back to the community. I was new to Massachusetts politics and local governance, and I had to reach out to a couple of people, and they said to me, there's a lot of committees in your town, and that would be a good way to get involved. And so I put forth my name, and I was interviewed and appointed to the Finance Committee. I've been doing that for the last 5 years now. And honestly, I have so enjoyed doing that, and the welcome reception that we've received here in Wareham. I just wanted to put myself forward. I know a lot of times we have limited volunteers for a lot of positions in town, and I have a specific background, education, and experiences, and I thought if they could be a value add for the town of Wareham, then I wanted to offer that. So that's why I'm here tonight.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Wirtz, you have 2 minutes.
Hi, Indiana. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to participate in the panel. As you know, I'm a write-in candidate. I first encountered Wareham when I was 6 years old. My uncle and aunt bought the last house on a point on a beach, the beach called Briarwood, and I spent my childhood and my teen years here enjoying being in Wareham. In 1998, I actually bought a house on Briarwood Beach, and I lived outside the state, but I wanted a house near where my family was, near home. From the perspective of what I had as a career, I worked in the technology industry, but I was not a technician, I was not a programmer, and I wasn't an engineer. I had marketing expertise. So in 1990, I founded a strategic consulting business, and we worked specifically with technology companies. We worked on helping bring them to market, have them bring their products to market. And we worked with everyone. I worked with Dell from the time they built their second building. We worked with Data General. We worked with Digital Equipment Corp. We worked with AT&T and IBM and HP Software and over 100 companies, and many of them you'd recognize and many of them you wouldn't. I was inducted into the Technology Hall of Fame in the 2010 and 2011 timeframe. And in 2018, I decided to shut the business after 30 years. And I decided to come home. I decided to come home to Wareham. So I'm here, I have expertise, I have experience, I have knowledge, I have time, and I have creativity. And I bring a new set of eyes and a new set of attributes to Wareham. And I believe it can add tremendous value to the government in this town, especially at the selectman level.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, so we're going to move into our questions. And once again, as I've said for the past 2 segments, if you feel that you've already answered one of these questions well enough, you can yield your time, and we'll just move on to the next candidate. And then also, if you do, or I'll ask if you need the question repeated before repeating it, to save some time as well. So we're going to start with Mr. Slavin. The first question tonight is, what is your vision for the town's future? You have 1 minute.
Thank you. We have a banner that gets displayed on the streetlights posts. It says, live, work, and play in Wareham. It also says the same thing for the onset area. Well, we can live and we can play here in Wareham, but the work statement is where we have fallen down. This is where I need to find solutions to make it complete. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lawrence.
Yeah, I think that's an important question because without vision, you don't really have a sense of direction. And so I'll explain it this way for me. When we were brought up here to Massachusetts, we looked at a lot of different towns. We were staying in a hotel in Walpole looking for a home. We ended up down here in that search, and there was just a lot about Wareham that appealed to us as a family. The thing that really stuck with us the most, to be quite candid, is it reminded me in ways of the small town that I grew up in back in Georgia. That town went through a lot of changes during my lifetime, and in fact, it went from a small community to the 10th largest city in Georgia right now. You go back there, and you don't really recognize the place anymore. And I understand that's fine. Everybody has a different vision. Sometimes, people prefer the city. Sometimes people prefer a more municipal type of setting. But for me, for my family, for my children, we like the community sense that Wareham offered to us. In fact, we bought a home here almost 2 years ago now. We've decided this is going to be our home. And my vision is to help Wareham address the problems that we have, specifically in financial areas, providing municipal services, but to not lose that sense of community and small town feel that differentiates it from other places around here.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Wertz, you have 1 minute.
When I think of vision, I think about how do we look, how do we present what we want to be, how do we know what we want to be? You know, as I've walked around the community for the last couple of years, I will hear some professionals, some politicians, or a Cape Cod town. We have other people say we're the gateway to the Cape. At least there's some gates down by the police station that say that. It probably actually refers back to before there was a 495 and 25 highway. We have a new slogan that says better before the bridge, and you know, better what? Better food, better living, better image, better what? And unfortunately, we also have an image that I've heard from many people who are not from Wareham when I say that's where I live, and they say, oh, you're Brockton by the sea. So whatever we do, we need to go forward and push what the town's vision is, what the citizens' visions is, not just ours. We look today, you know, the towns have done a lot of work about vision. They've got a smart growth plan. They've got a 2020 master plan that I encourage citizens to go on the town website, get it out and read it. It's 91 pages, but it's not long. The consultants who did that work structured it so it was easy to tell what they were recommending based on what our citizens said and what some of the solutions are. So I believe we're a Cape Cod town. I buy into that vision. I buy into the work that the town has done to say that that is going to be their vision. What I don't buy into is we haven't implemented on it yet.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to our next question. Mr. Slavin, what made you choose to run for this office? You have 1 minute.
Thank you. There's two reasons why I've run for the position of selectman. First is kind of simple, goes back to with my grandparents. When I was going to college, actually, my grandmother in particular told me that when I'm able, I need to give back to the community I'm living in. And that's really what I've done over the last 15 years. I've been a volunteer in many different organizations, etc. Back in the 1990s, I was one of 9 commissioners of the Massachusetts Marine Fisheries Commission. There I made contacts with state officials and learned how municipal agencies actually work. Not what we think it is, but actually how they function itself. So between that and the 7 different boards, commissions, committees, and commissions I was on between 2006 and 2012, I basically felt that I could do a better job and help Wareham better as a selectman than holding all these other positions. And that's where I'm at as of today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lawrence, 1 minute.
So, like I said, when we moved here in 2015, I decided I wanted to give back. I was fortunate enough to be appointed to the Finance Committee, and I've just really enjoyed my role in that. And in fact, during my time there, working with Mr. Sullivan, the town administrator, I began to think to myself, you know, that's something that I would really like to do on the back half, the back 9 of my life. And so quite candidly, I went to Derek and I asked him, you know, how do you transition to that type of job? He said, you need to get a master's in public administration. I thought to myself, well, I've already got an MBA and I've already got a master's in government, but okay, I'll go to school for a little bit longer. While I'm still taking that degree, I'm not finished. And a number of professors there said, you know, the best way to learn that job, expand your service, run for the Board of Selectmen. And I'll be candid, I don't have an agenda. I don't have an axe to grind. Back when I was first thinking about even running, I actually sent a message to Mr. Slavin and told him that I was thinking, that it was nothing personal with him. So I'm not angry at anybody. I'm not a one agenda person. I just want to serve the town, listen to people, learn their issues and interests, and represent them as best as I can.
Thank you very much. Ms. Wertz, 1 minute.
Thank you, Indiana. I decided to run not too long ago. I have had 60 years experience in this town, but I've only been here for 3 years full-time. So for many years, I couldn't vote. And for the first 3 years I've been here, we've lost a year and a half of it to COVID. I decided to run because of the Herod warrant. When I looked at that, I spent 2 days studying it. I think there were tremendous things missing from it, including protection for the town of Wareham. When I also looked at a vote of 85% no and 15% yes, I feel that there's something wrong with how our selectmen board and our planning board are doing things today. There's no way there should have been an item brought to a special board meeting, a special town meeting with an outcome of 85% no. Currently, when we look at projects like that project, we appear to basically use 2 filters. We use a land filter. Do we have land and does it make money? I think there are additionally 3 other filters that are crucial. And first of all, does it work for the citizens? Does it work for the citizens in the town totally? And specifically, does it work for the citizens in the area that's going to be impacted? Is it going to affect their quality of life? Is it going to affect the property values that they have? How is it going to make their life so different? How is it going to make them either gain or lose better value of life quality within Wareham? We also need to consider the filter of environment. You know, we have zoning laws that it looks like our zoning areas are really defined well. We have areas that protect the environment, and I don't believe we have any business writing over it. There's plenty of property within the town that can be developed. And lastly, we have to use the filter of the town's vision. If we are going to be a Cape
I'm
Town
sorry
or
to
what,
interrupt, but that's time. I'm sorry.
fine, thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go to our next question. So, Mr. Slavin, the question is, what do you like most about the community, and how do you intend to protect the community in your terms of office? You have 1 minute.
Thank you. I'll try and keep it brief as I've done right along. For Wareham, it's simply the diversity of the people and the geography of the town is what attracted me, basically. It's really straightforward that way. For protection of the community is simply to provide guidance and direction to achieve the residents' needs and to keep Wareham sustainable long-term. That is simply what the job requires. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lawrence, 1 minute.
So, yeah, I mean, for me, this was a community we chose to live in out of a lot of other places that we were looking at. I mean, obviously the beaches appealed to us, the environment, the natural environment around here. When we first moved here, we were renting month to month. You know, despite the beauty of the area, you know, we were outsiders and we wanted to know where we were living. We've come to love the community, and that's why we decided to make our home. And I think that's what really needs to be protected here. I think obviously the Board of Selectmen is not a paid or compensated position. It's essentially a volunteer role. But at the end of the day, you're still serving the people. And I think what's important is that we remember the community comes first, and to represent their interests and to protect what's important to the people who live here.
Thank you. Ms. Wertz, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. I love the water. I love our osprey. I love our swans. I love Lindsay's seafood chowder. I love Good Shepherd's Church. And most of all, I like the directness of the people. We have some serious issues that we have to help protect our citizens against, and that is maintaining the quality of our democracy. Recently, a few years ago, Mr. Slavin and the town council wrote an article for a 0 quorum. That means today, if we have the town coordinator and the town clerk, I believe, the people who run this town can do anything they want without the input of the citizens. I think we need to work against that, and we need to bring our citizens back into a more regularly involved effort in our government. We need to keep our democracy.
Thank you very much. we'll move on to the next question here. Oh, we have a rebuttal from Mr. Slavin, so you'll have 1 minute to do so.
Thank you. The reason for the zero quorum is something that I worked with actually the town council. The reason we did it is we were having trouble getting enough people into our town meetings. We were going below 150 or less, or an article would come in. And because of the lottery system, people would get up and leave if that was the article they were for. And once we were below 150, we basically had a real problem. And the problem was simply that we couldn't pass any money articles. And that was the reason for the zero quorum. And that, again, was done with town council, not for two people to be able to pass anything else, but simply to make it, it's basically, the zero quorum rule is really just so you can go ahead and have your meetings. You would never have a zero quorum. It's just a term that was used. And it's the reason why it worked out that way. And it's proved to be very effective because we've been slowly getting more people to show up, and it's not the threat of a zero quorum. And just as an example, our water and fire department actually listened to that and just passed a zero quorum for them just a few weeks ago. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Wurt, you have 1 minute for a rebuttal.
Mr. Slavin, I would just suggest that we pay more attention in how we work with our citizens to get them involved instead of giving them a reason to not be involved.
Thank you very much, everyone. We'll move on to our next question here, since all rebuttals have been used. That question is, we'll start with Mr. Slavin, sorry. And the question is, what do you feel is the town's responsibility to homeless individuals and families, and what would you do to mitigate the impact of homelessness on the community? You have 1 minute to answer.
Thank you. This is a subject, not only homelessness, but also mental health issues. Quite a while ago, our federal government and our state government have basically stopped caring, and this is the best word about what happens. They dump people back out on the street, and they've left basically the cities and towns to handle something. And what I've been trying to do actually over the last few years is, between the people that I know at the federal and state level, I've been trying to put pressure on them to actually come back and start to fund the issues in order for us to take care of this. The cities and towns do not have enough funds, do not have the actual tools in order to make this work on their own. We need to basically have funding to help us provide housing. We need to provide some employment to make these people feel that they're important again and have a useful lifestyle. And also the medical issues that they have as well, to provide, provide actual service for them when needed. The federal government and the state government have really abandoned this group. And this is the only way we're going to get this done. We can't do it just on our own. We need that help. We need that funding. And we need for the government to stop sending money overseas, taking care of all these other countries and everything else. And we need to turn around and put money back into this country and give this country back to where it should be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lawrence, 1 minute.
So I spent about 20 years as a pastor and the director of a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We were stationed primarily in Minneapolis and Miami, working with the areas and some people in some of the more needy areas of those communities. We did a lot of work with homeless people. It was not just exclusively homeless people, but we did a lot of work with them, and the range of needs are incredibly diverse. But I reflected back on my time when I used to do that, and the one thing that we needed as a nonprofit, as a community group trying to help out, was we needed help. And the reality was, as much as we would reach out to local, state, federal government, that was a slow process in receiving any. One of the things I'd like to see us do, and I don't know if this is possible, but we have so many committees, is put together a committee of people that are really passionate about this issue. And allow them to educate us as a community, inform us in ways that we can help. Because I'll be candid, when I first moved up here, I didn't realize there was a homeless problem. I was just used to seeing it in a different manner, like I said, in large cities. But I think that way, my experience has been, people are more than willing to help. People are more than willing to give. A lot of times it just comes down to a lack of awareness, a lack of opportunity. And I think that would be one way, in the absence of immediate assistance from the state government, that we as a town could start doing something to help people in need.
Thank you very much. Ms. Wertz, you have 1 minute.
Well, gentlemen, I agree with both of you, but I want to contribute some additional information here. We do have volunteers working. We have churches working. There in particular is a woman named Z Suarez. She has 4 children, or had 4 children. 3 years ago, her son died of an overdose and homeless. She has started a foundation called raiselegacy.org, and she takes care of regularly our homeless population, our homeless citizens. And we're told there's somewhere between 12 and 15 people right now, but it's probably bigger than that. What we really need is, even before we get funding, and though we'd like it tomorrow, we need the town to have people and departments committed to working in this area. And that includes everyone from our health department, our police, our EMT groups, and our fire departments. The biggest challenge these people have right now, because they're not homogenous, they all have individual challenges. They have no place to sleep, especially in the cold. Right now, the closest shelters are in New Bedford and down the Cape. That's easily a half-an-hour drive each way if you had a car, and we don't have a busing system. So as a team, whether we hold positions together or not, gentlemen, we should work together to make sure we have a shelter in place for these people. And we should get the town involved at all levels.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Slavin, you have 1 minute for a rebuttal.
I actually spent time in what we call a warming shelter. We had a blizzard back some years ago with the police chief. My wife and I were both there for almost 18 hours. The problem we have is, we've been working on this for quite a while, is between the Red Cross and the State Department of Public Health, we're not allowed to have a shelter place when we have these emergencies. We are forced to take people from Wareham and bring them either up to basically Plymouth or to New Bedford. The reason is because they will not certify anything, and then legally we cannot provide this unless it's certified. So therefore we have no choice. We've been trying, but we've been unsuccessful to get either one of these organizations to accept any of the locations we have. We've had them down here. Mr. Ethier, who's in charge of our Board of Health, is still working constantly on this. And someday I hope to be able to solve this. But the problem is, until the state allows us, you cannot put people into a place unless it's state certified and allowed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Wertz, you have 1 minute for a rebuttal.
I understand that, Mr. Slavin, and we have groups within Wareham that work around it. For example, the state would not let Good Shepherd's Church be a place where homeless could stay because they didn't have 2 bathrooms. They only had 1. St. Patrick's Church had 2 bathrooms. So those 2 churches got together. The people can stay in St. Patrick's, and Good Shepherds will provide all the meals for the people when they're there. So we have to find our ways around the state rules and regulations. We have to find a way for them to work until we can find out how to comply with them.
Thank you very much. And with that, we'll move on to our next question. And we'll start with Mr. Slavin. The question is, how do you balance environmental protection with the need for development in town to generate revenue? You have 1 minute to answer.
Thank you. This is an area which I'm smiling because we've just gone through this, and the town basically had made a decision, what we thought would be a long-term decision. And of course, it was soundly defeated. And I'm not going to hide behind it. Basically, I felt long-term this was a possibility that we just went through. But basically what happens is you have the pros and cons, which need to be balanced out no matter what. You cannot, unfortunately, have conservation and economic development, as 2 separate things. They both intersect with each other. And at the same time, you have to make a decision which one is going to work best. You'd like to be able to say they both can work together, but they really are opposite ends. And that's one of the real problems you have. So again, going back to my prior history, my 5 years in the state marine fisheries, I had to balance the needs of the recreational fishermen, the commercial fishermen, which are at odds with each other. But at the same time, how do we protect the biomass of the fisheries? So this is very similar to what we're dealing with today in Wareham, as far as our land, our forests, our animals in those forests, and at the same time, how do we go ahead and have the economic development we need to get basically monies and stuff to generate the revenue for the town. And basically that particular training was quite helpful for me to take what I call a long-term approach. I don't look at things for 1, 2, 5 years. I've always looked at things based on my accounting background, my management background, what happens in 15, 20, 30, 40 years down the road. Because at the end of the day, you have to have your revenues and you have to have everything in place to be able to provide things. But at the same time, you do have to have conservation. For myself, of course, you know, I'm on the Wareham Land Trust, and I'm basically a steward for a piece of property. I'm also in the Buzzards Bay Coalition. I was heavily involved in bringing the bathhouse to the town. But at the same time, I'm a commissioner of the Serpent Commission, which is for economic development, et cetera, and the Mass Municipal Association, et cetera. So I sit with my feet on both sides of the table. So again, when I make decisions, it's not because I don't concern myself with one or the other.
Sorry to go off,
decision.
sir, but that is time. Sorry.
Thank you, no problem.
And we'll move on to Mr. Lawrence. You have 1 minute to answer.
So the last 12 plus years that I've spent in manufacturing, we've got locations all over the world. We create a wide variety of products, filtration media for those who are wondering what it is. One of the challenges in any large company is you have a lot of different departments that usually have one central vision, one central goal, but they can have competing priorities sometimes within those departments. One of my more recent jobs is I work as a liaison between those different departments to understand operations needs, supply chain needs, sales needs, and to help all of the relevant stakeholders come together and understand each other's needs, understand the challenges, and find a common ground solution. Environment is important. The ability to provide efficient and effective service delivery to the people in our community is equally important. As Mr. Slavin said, sometimes those are competing priorities. I think the degree to which we as elected leadership can make certain that all of the relevant stakeholders are included in the process is crucial for us as a community to be able to make a decision weighing all of the costs, the benefits, and the trade-offs that are going to be involved with either taking option A, option B, or discovering an option C. It's really going to vary from situation to situation. I think if you tend to one extreme, you make the possibility of a solution very difficult. At least that's been my experience.
Thank you very much. Ms. Wurt, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. And I look at this conundrum, because that's what we've made it in this town, a little bit differently. I think there are different ways to address it. We have a lot of property in the town that is blighted. We don't know who owns it, or we do know who owns it and nothing's happening to it. The inventory is pretty extreme, and I believe that's what we should do. First of all, we should keep an inventory of the products that, not, excuse me, products, the properties that are available for development. We need to understand how big this site is. Is there poison in there in the ground? Who owns it? What's its value, and any number of things about it. And we need, I believe, to work against that inventory first. Now, what does that do for environmentally delicate areas? We have a zoning map that we have zoned out areas to protect. We have zoned areas to have residences in, and we need to honor our own zoning. That particular piece of land up at the end of Glen Charlie Road, there are over 200 endangered species on that land between animals and plants. Now, when they disappear, it's not just they disappear, what disappears with them is the value that they provide to the ecosystem. And if the ecosystem's healthy, our citizens will be healthy. And if the ecosystem isn't, our citizens won't be. I think instead we should be looking at ecotourism development. We do actually a quasi little job of that down in Onset, but we have beautiful areas to work with and to actually build a business out of our ecosystem that's delicate and therefore income from it as well. So I have a whole different thought approach to this particular situation.
Thank you very much. And with that, we'll move on to our next question. We'll start with Mr. Slavin. Mr. Slavin, it seems as though many residents feel that they're not always getting accurate information from the town on certain matters, which has built a big disconnect between our town government and our citizens. Do you have suggestions for improving communication between town boards, such as the Board of Selectmen, and residents? And you have 1 minute to answer.
Thank you. This is probably one of the most frustrating issues that we have not even begun to resolve. It's something that I've been constantly complaining about. We basically right now, the way we get our information is really from the newspapers, WCTV broadcasts of all the vital boards and commissions and committees. I currently do a TV show with WCTV explaining what is happening, what is coming, and try to promote transparency. I wanted to do this years ago, but basically the administration didn't want to run anything through the town itself directly because they didn't want to get involved in blog sites, etc., which I can understand. But I've been doing this for a while because I thought it's really important that people understand what's coming for them and what the reason is and what to expect coming as well. And a lot of times when I review news items in the newspapers, etc., I find that the information is incorrect, not clear, or confusing. When that happens, I actually call the newspaper and I ask them, if you please take a look at what you wrote and let me explain what actually happened and would you correct it so that people understand what's really happening. It's very frustrating when you see things coming up and down the line when the information is wrong. So obviously it's a problem for us. And as far as, the scheduling, et cetera, which is part of this question as well, we have so many boards and committees. This town really runs on our volunteers. And it's really, and almost every city in town has the same issues, et cetera. We don't have the money to pay everybody. So the bottom line is there's only 4 days a week in which we can have meetings. And what you end up happening is that whether you like it or not, you'll have meetings on top of each other. And with Zoom today, it has become ridiculous. For myself, because of my requirements at the state level, at the what we call the district level, and also at the county level and at the region level, I could have some days as many as 4 or 5 Zoom meetings within a 3-hour period, which is physically impossible. So I understand the problems of trying to schedule all these different things, but the bottom line is that we have a lot of stuff to put through in a very small window. And as much as we like to schedule things easily for everybody, what do you do when you have a finance committee meeting?
That's time. Thank you.
No problem.
And Mr. Lawrence, same question to you. You'll have 1 minute.
So I think this question also got asked for the school committee. So I imagine we're probably going to sound a little bit like Pete and repeat here. And I actually, the newspaper interview yesterday, she asked this exact same question. The 2 things I told her yesterday, just 2 ideas I had. I thought, because obviously in a town, in any diverse community, people get their information from a lot of different sources. I thought for people that are really into social media, Facebook, particularly, I thought a dedicated page that would allow official postings without commenting, because I think that's the pain point that most people who run some of these group pages have, is that sometimes it just turns into a rock fight. And if you had a dedicated page from the town that was just simply presenting information so that people had a trusted resource where they could go, where they knew it wasn't rumors, it wasn't hearsay, it wasn't, this is what I heard. I think that would help minimize some of that because there'd be a central repository. The other thing I had was for people who use our town website. Sometimes I have trouble finding stuff on there. I know in our company, whenever we move to a new platform, one of the things that we do is we offer brief classes for people. I think in this Zoom environment, we could probably do something like that with people who are interested, have somebody just click here, click there. If you're looking for this information, this is where you would go to find it. And I think that would help people understand where they can find some of that information that they're looking for. That was my 2 ideas.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Wirtz, you have 1 minute as well.
Thank you. So as I said earlier, my expertise has been in marketing. Traditionally, the rule of thumb was people had to see something 3 times before they remembered it. With social media, it's now up to about 10 times. So we're limited in what we can do, but we have to be proactive. I believe we should do a little bit of research and understand what people Indiana's age want for communication, how they want to get it, where they want to get it. I think a second group are voting citizens, age 18 to 26, 28. The third group are the families that have children. They're in their 30s, they're approaching 40s. They might even be approaching 50s. And above that, we have our senior citizens. And when we look at the myriad of ways communication can happen, television, magazines, 95 different social media platforms, TV, newspapers, everybody is going to have a different preference. And I think we can limit those preference by age groups. If we can determine how to best reach our citizen base and on an outreach level, not expecting them just to reach into us, I think we can go a long way in establishing a town where citizen becomes really involved again.
Thank you very much. And the final question of the night, we'll start with Mr. Slavin. The question is, in the past few years, we've seen many project proposals come and go for our town. So what should future development in our town look like? And you have 1 minute to answer.
Well, basically, when I was on the planning board for about 4 or 5 years, I always was complaining that we have a developer come into town and they have to go before basically like zoning. We have the planning board, you have conservation, then you have other issues. There was no real program per se or a person to go ahead and guide someone through the process. So Wareham became basically known very simply is if you want to do a project in the town of Wareham, be prepared to spend a couple of years before you get it. And that's if you get it. So I pushed pretty hard for quite a while, and we basically did not have a director of planning and economic development. Mr. Sullivan, the town administrator, basically went out and we hired Ken Buckland, who had a lot of expertise in the area. And that's how we funnel things through now. They come basically before to the planner. They sit down and go over what they want to do. They explain the process, what's going to happen. We have a Wareham Redevelopment Authority, which things go to them as well, because that's part of what their job is as well. So basically, by the time it gets there, hopefully everybody has sat down and gone through things so the developer knows what to expect and what's going on. We still have a tremendous amount of work to do in this area because our reputation has got a little better, but it's still not where it should be. And we need to speed up the process, as I said before. We have the community compact that we basically signed on early and the municipal agreements that the state put through to speed up time. We have another issue that's basically we're trying to figure out. The state, the governor went through and put through a housing choice bill, but at the same time, he stuck in a bunch of things to speed up the zoning process from a 2/3 majority to a simple majority. The 2/3 majority has basically caused really difficult to get any zoning changes working fine. So that simple majority could help. But the problem is that the bottom line is that there's a lack of, I'll say, clear definition. And the state's going to have to go back and redo that because it's not working at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lawrence, 1 minute.
So I think we have to have a clear plan. Like I said, I've sat on the finance committee for 5 years, and I know that's not a long time relative, obviously, to what some members of our communities have invested in terms of their time in different communities. But I'm just looking from the outside in. It sometimes seems like, and I said this in the interview yesterday, I don't know how much of it will actually be transcribed, but from where I said it, it feels like sometimes we're just spinning a roulette wheel and hoping we hit a winner. That's what it really felt like, especially with this whole last project with NODOS. I mean, I'll be candid. I respect and appreciate the environment, but I'm not going to try and fool anybody into thinking that I understand the nuances and the intricacies of the of environmental concerns. I'm certainly open to listening to that. But for me, I just felt like what they had proposed and the uncertainty and the unclarity of that just didn't fit, broadly speaking, to what I was hearing from people. What I hear in the last few weeks, the privileges I've had to talk to people, a lot of people want to see revitalization, rehabilitation of certain areas of town. I think what we're doing along Main Street is a perfect example of what people want to see, rather than sprawling out and continuing to grow in terms of breadth. Let's focus on existing assets and find ways that we can convert those into meaningful opportunities.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Wertz, you have 1 minute.
Would you ask me the question again, please? I want to
Absolutely.
hear exactly how it's stated.
Absolutely. In the past few years, we've seen many project proposals come and go for our town. What should future development in our town look like?
So I haven't been here to be involved in prior projects. I don't know what happened to them or with them, so I can't understand why they may or may not be in place. What I do believe is we have to go back, and while it adds a few extra steps to the consideration process, it doesn't have to add time. We need to consider how every project is going to impact our citizens, both those of the whole town and those specific to the area. We have to understand how it will impact the environment, and we have to understand how it fits the town's vision. And so right now we're looking at developing downtown, and we can, depending on how we do that, we can make us a Cape Cod little town, or we can make us a disaster. When we look at some of the towns around, they have build directions. When they work with a developer, they have certain parameters on what style the buildings have to have, what's the curb appeal of the whole environment. How does it, if we use different developers for different parts of downtown, how do they tie together? How do they present to anyone who comes in Wareham that we are a great place to come and play, and we are a great place to come and live? And how does everything we do present that vision?
Thank you very much. And with that, we've finished our questions, so we'll go into closing statements for each of you. We'll start with Mr. Slavin. 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Thank you. As I said, I've been basically a selectman for 9 years now, and before that, I was on many boards and committees, so I have a good idea of how the town works, how it functions. I know what it needs. The problem, of course, is making these happen. As an individual, I am one, so you have to basically build consensus, and that takes time. And for me, I've used my position to do basically stuff at the state level, which is the Mass Municipal Association. I also represent the county, Plymouth County. I am the Mass Selectmen Association District 4 representative, which means I basically represent all the selectmen in Plymouth County, Cape and the Islands. I'm also for the Serpent Commission, which is the Southern Region Planning and Economic Development District. I'm actually the chairman of the commission, and we do not only conservation work, we do technical assistance, we do master plans, which we did for Wareham. At the same time, we also control and make the final decisions on all major road projects in Southeast Mass for the 27. This has allowed me in my positions, my work for quite a while, to be able to present Wareham's needs and to get these things done in a reasonable manner, which we haven't had before. What I have left to do, and what I'm trying to do before I finish my career, is I'm close to getting commuter rail to the town of Wareham. We will have an answer for that probably in the next 6 months, and it will be actually up and running if it happens with the new Middleborough station, most likely in 2023. I want to help get our inner harbor developed. It's a shame, actually it's a crime, that a town like Wareham with its coastline has not used any of its harbor to increase revenues and to make it a better place for everybody. I don't know any other place along the coast that hasn't done what we should have done. We have a particular project in the old Greer property, which is the Baker Head, that we have someone coming in to do a nice development. It's going to be the kickoff point to get the inner harbor on Merchants Way done. We have several people that it looks like they're going to buy some of the major properties on the water side of Merchants Way. At that point there, we have what we call an economic opportunity zone, which gives them tax credits, et cetera, to make it possible to spend the money to turn these buildings around. and actually face the water. I'm also working with Mr. Buckland to go ahead and get what we call controlled gate crossings over the railroad tracks, because you actually cannot cross over when you see the people fishing there. That's illegal. You cannot cross the railroad tracks. It's their property. We have a fully designed boardwalk that goes along the water back there that we did an engineering study, and actual plans are sitting in the planner's desk to make that inner harbor work as well. The other piece that I've been really working on hard, because I haven't had success, again, because of money, but we now have a chance between the Recovery Act, the CARES Act, and the new Infrastructure Act coming down the line, is what I call a community center. It's something I've been banging on for probably the last 5 years. It's badly needed for the community. It would provide a proper senior center. Just let me do one thing if you appreciate it, I'll get out of that. It would provide a senior center. It would provide a place for all these nonprofit organizations to meet and hold things. And it'll also provide for a proper Boys and Girls Club. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lawrence, 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Yeah, so I'll just, in closing, I would just say, back when I was deliberating the decision to put my name in the hat to kind of stand forward, this is all new for me. And one of the things that somebody said to me, they said, well, win or lose, one of the benefits that'll come out of it for you is that you'll get a chance to meet more people, to learn more about the community, to understand more of the needs here. And that has certainly been true. And I just I wanted to say thank you to all the people over the last few weeks in particular, and the months, who have taken time out of their day to meet with me, citizens, committee heads, different people who've just said, hey, here's where we're at, here's our history, our challenges, our dreams. And I appreciate you taking the time with a transplant to share those things with me. If I win, my hope is to continue to do just that, to be somebody who will be a listening ear for people in the community, to not approach any one issue or vote with a specific agenda, but to weigh those interests from the community against what I think would be the long-term benefits, the best long-term benefits for the community. If I lose, I have one more term left on the FinCom. I said at the outset, this is our home. This is where we want to retire, and we will just continue to serve in that capacity and find other ways to continue to give back to this place we call home. Thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Wurt, you have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Wareham is definitely at a flex point right now. With 23,000 citizens, we're not a little town anymore, and we're not a big town. And everything we do is crucial in defining who we're going to be, not just for the next 20 years, but maybe for the next 50 years. And we can only do that right if we have a very involved citizenship. If I get this, I might say when I get this, I am looking at every way we can possibly bring the citizen back into our government, how we can keep our democracy, and how we can structure a town that everyone is going to want to visit and live in. And we shall see. So thank you very much. And I thank you, WCTV, as well. I know you guys are in the background, and a good night to all of you.
Thank you very much to you, and thank you to all candidates for joining us tonight. And thank you to everyone watching at home. This has been a very thoughtful and constructive dialogue. So thank you all.
Thank you, Indiana.
Thank you. Good job, Indiana. Thank you for taking it up.
Thank you again, everybody. Be well, be safe, please.
And with that, that concludes our April 2021 Wareham Candidates Night. I want to thank everyone at home for watching, and especially thank our candidates for coming tonight. And if you missed part of our broadcast, it will be immediately shared to Facebook and will also be uploaded to YouTube as well. Please don't forget to get out and vote on Election Day, May 4th, and use your voice to spark the change you want to see in our town. And finally, for news regarding the town of Wareham and our schools, we welcome you to check out www.warehamvikingnews.com to read our news articles and watch our broadcasts live at 5 p.m. on Wednesdays or on YouTube, and like our Facebook page, Wareham Viking News. My name's Indiana Troop. Thank you to everyone again, and have a great night. Bye-bye.